All right, welcome back to the program. I'm Sam Sorbo, and I'm now joined by Tom Fitton, who is the president of Judicial Watch. And forgive me for getting a little fangirly because I'm a huge fan of both Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch. They are a self-styled watchdog group. I think they've issued more FOIA requests than any other organization. Am I right there, Tom?
I suspect you are right, Sam. Thank you. Thousands of them and hundreds of lawsuits, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so and they're really just doggedly pursuing the truth, which is fantastic on behalf of the citizens of the United States. So I just had a whole meltdown about the Mueller report, and I'd love to ask you a little bit about that. But before we do, let's go back to the days of Benghazi and the Hillary Clinton emails. Well, we don't even have to go back to Benghazi, but the Hillary Clinton emails, because you guys have uncovered some really I would say, like, you found the smoking gun. You've uncovered the damning truth that no one really wanted to admit. And that is that the Obama administration knew all about the private server.
Yeah, that's for sure. And, you know, the irony is it was a Benghazi Freedom of Information Act lawsuit that helped uncover it that Judicial Watch had filed. And the court in that case is tired of the cover-up and authorized Judicial Watch to take discovery and get documents, put witnesses under oath. And some of the new documents we were able to get show the White House counsel's office was guiding the response to this other group, as I mentioned, who had asked for records about the alias accounts of Hillary Clinton. And they were lied to. They were told there were no records. And of course there were, because she was running her system secretly and separately in the State Department. Both the State Department and the Obama White House knew that.
Right. Have you talked to Russia at all to find copies of her emails? Because we know that Russia was reading everything, right?
You know, it's interesting. We did look to see if her emails had been hacked by Russia, and we found evidence on the dark web that might have been the case. And we told the FBI that back in 2016, but they were in cover-up mode, not investigation mode, as you know.
But it seems like they're always in cover-up mode. Forgive me. It seems like the FBI has been in cover-up mode for the Clintons for a very long time.
Yeah, that's for sure. Certainly on the emails and even the Russia connections prior to that through Uranium One and the Clinton Foundation. You know, you had the Justice Department and FBI leadership basically restraining any serious law enforcement investigations of Mrs. Clinton and the Clinton Foundation, as I call it, the Clinton cash machine.
The Clinton cash machine. Have you guys looked into, I don't know that this would help, the Clinton Foundation, because the Clinton Foundation took in a lot of money and spent very little on charity?
Well, we've looked at the Clinton Foundation generally in the sense of exposing through this, the emails we were able to find on the Clinton email server, that there was a pay-to-play scheme between the foundation and the State Department, where donors and friends of the foundation got special favors from the State Department as a result of Clinton Foundation intervention, all contrary, arguably, to law, and certainly to the promises Hillary Clinton made upon taking over the State Department, because she said, "I'll stay out of Clinton State Department, Clinton Foundation business," and she broke that promise almost immediately upon entering office.
Yeah, just to revisit that. So when she was offered the Department of State, Secretary of State position, the Obama White House said to her that she would have to give up the Clinton Foundation. Basically, they told her she had to close it down. She said, "No, I promise I'll steer clear of that. I won't be involved in that." And then, of course, that didn't happen. But by the way, who's kidding themselves? Like, everybody knew that was going to happen, right? That it was going to end up that way.
Well, yeah, we knew that's what was going to happen. That's why we asked for the records. And of course, they stonewall us there too. And you know, the interesting thing is the obstruction didn't work because we broke through the stone wall. The records were released to us in 2016, and it had the consequence of keeping her from the presidency. So there was some rough justice there. That wasn't the purpose of our inquiry, obviously, but that was the consequence of her obstruction.
Right. Now, tell me I'm an idiot, because when they first came out with this idea that somehow the Russians had colluded to get Trump elected, I said that's laughable on its face. The Clintons colluded with Russia long before colluded, not criminally maybe, but just colluded with Russia long before all of that. Why would the Russians want Trump to be elected? All evidence points to the fact that they would want Hillary to be elected.
Well, my analysis, to the degree that we can be confident the Russians were trying to mess with us, they were trying to, in my view, put Hillary Clinton back on her heels because, like everyone else in America, and other than maybe President Trump, everyone thought that Hillary Clinton was likely to win, even though I'm sure the political class did. I'm sure the Russians didn't have any great insight. And so everything they were doing was designed to make Hillary Clinton's life miserable as president and put her back on her heels. It wasn't to help President Trump win the election. It was to mess with the United States government, the United States government, who they thought the keys of which were going to be turned over to Hillary Clinton.
Right. I mean, it's funny because Joe Biden is campaigning on the idea that foreign leaders want him to be president. That's not actually a good recommendation.
Well, it shows you the hypocrisy of the left. They don't care about foreign interference in our elections, other than when it suits them politically to target their political enemies. And in the case of President Trump, they were making things up to link him to foreigners involving themselves in our campaigns.
Right.
I mean, Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton were working with the Chinese to keep themselves in office, obtain and retain office during their presidency. So the irony of them targeting Trump over this fake Russia connection is just so rich.
Right. And by the way, the 1980s have called and they want their foreign policy back, Mitt Romney, because you think that Russia is a threat. And now all of a sudden Russia's the horrible threat. So you just opened that can of worms with the Mueller report and the idea that the entire Mueller report, and this is so aggravating to me. And this is partly why I'm so grateful to Judicial Watch and to you personally, Tom Fitton, because the idea that Mueller pursued an investigation for 2 years into something that had no basis in reality, and that they knew had no basis in reality. They knew that the dossier, or basically the rumor book, was concocted by a Trump hater. They all knew it. Why? Why did we allow this to go on for 2 years?
Well, because the swamp was out to get President Trump. It was as I point out, a coup cabal that was targeting President Trump. It tried to interfere with the election in 2016. It tried to overthrow the president almost as soon as he was elected. And it continues, frankly, it continued through the Mueller operation, which is part of this effort to destabilize the presidency and try to remove him through indictment or otherwise. And if they couldn't get him, they tried to get his family. That didn't work out because they didn't commit crimes. So now the baton's been handed over to the Democrats on the Hill, who, in a just world, would be investigated, some of them, for their involvement in said coup.
Right. This is what I want to see. But frankly, I think that anybody who self-identifies as a Democrat should be summarily removed from office because they don't support the Constitution, period. And you probably agree with me because you're a big Constitution guy.
Well, any politician who's opposed to the Constitution is problematic. So, as a nonpartisan president or a president of a nonpartisan organization, I'll defer on just removing one member of a party.
And I don't mean
another.
Yes, forgive me for even thinking of putting words in your mouth. That's not what I meant to do. Where do we go from here? The Mueller investigation has now been proven. It hasn't been about collusion. It was never about collusion. That was just a great word that they hung their hat on for 2 years. Initially, it was actually secret spying on a private citizen of the United States who happened to be running for office. Then it became an open investigation into collusion, which Trump allowed. And now that collusion hasn't been shown to be part of the deal, they've switched it to now they've subpoenaed his financial records. That's never happened.
Well, certainly they're escalating it and continuing the harassment. The Justice Department should escalate the investigation. I know it's a review now. They need to transform it into a grand jury type of investigation, a truly criminal investigation. The president is a crime victim. The harassment out of Congress, it's a kind of a different ball of wax that has to be handled likely in the courts. There are other ways the president can push back as well by asking Congress for documents. Why doesn't Congress turn documents over to the president as part of his duties and responsibilities as president to figure out what to recommend to Congress in terms of reforms and legislation? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. FOIA, for instance, doesn't apply to Congress. Why not? And then secondly, the president can be transparent and order the agencies themselves to start releasing the details of the coup effort against him. And, sunlight is the best disinfectant here, and he's got to push hard for transparency to expose the bad guys.
Is he going to do that, you think?
I think he wants to do that. His cabinet agencies and the lawyers around him, I suspect, are constantly restraining him from doing aggressive things like that. But I trust he'll get to it in the end. Heck, he took the brave act of firing Comey, and the American people should be grateful for that. And
a
president willing to do that is someone who could do other positive things.
Well, I agree that he's brave. I don't think that I disagree that it was brave to fire Comey. He had great support for firing Comey. Sure, they all turned around and said, "Hey, why'd you do that?"
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Maybe he wasn't as brave at the time. Right.
At the time, he had all the support for firing Comey. He's like, I've even got it in writing. So he fires Comey, and then, of course, they change the narrative, and they say, wait, that's not what we meant. When we said fire Comey, we didn't mean for you to fire Comey. I mean, it's absurd. Yeah. I would love to see him act a little bit more courageous. I like the idea of turnabout is fair play. Well, I wonder. He seems to be a businessman. He's about getting business done. I don't know that he's going to allow himself to be that distracted by this stuff. But ultimately, that's really what this is about. That's why you refer to it as a coup. Because, and I called it earlier kind of a soft coup, not to imply that it's soft by any means, but this idea that it's like a subterfuge. It's like a coup that's beneath the surface. So what they're doing is they're declawing him. They're taking the bite out of, the things that he's trying to accomplish. And he's getting stuff done despite them, despite all of these distractions, despite their obfuscation and their, contradiction and their unwillingness to cooperate, right?
Yeah, I think that is going to be when the history books are written, they're going to look back and say, how was President Trump able to get anything done given the unprecedented harassment he suffered, not only directly but through his family, which was doubly unusual. And on top of that, you had the spying effort, his agencies conspiring against him, his law enforcement intelligence agencies conspiring against him. But think about this in terms of the word coup, Sam. If you had colonels and generals and majors in the Pentagon doing what officials at the top of the FBI and CIA and DOJ were doing for a time, would there be any doubt what you'd call it?
Yeah, I shouldn't. You're right. It's not a soft coup. It's a coup. It's just not a military coup.
Right.
Wow. Yeah, that's true. Tom Fitton, thank you so much for coming on the show. Guys, you can go over to judicialwatch.org and support Tom's efforts and the whole cast over there. You guys do great work, and I really appreciate
Thank you.
Thanks for letting
Well, we
your
have
voice
50 lawsuits, 50 lawsuits, Sam, focused on figuring out the deep state attack on President Trump and trying to get accountability there. There's no one else doing what we're doing to get to the bottom of it.
50 lawsuits focused on the deep state. This is, sadly, this is what we need. 50 might not even cover it. You know what I mean? It's sad that it's
we can't do enough. Yeah, we can't do enough in that regard, that's for sure.
But here's the thing. This has been building for years. This isn't just, all of a sudden there's a deep state. The deep state is so entrenched because it's been there for years. It's only further embedded. And can you describe to me, before I let you go, what do we mean by deep state?
Well, what we mean is the permanent bureaucracy, the establishment class in Washington, D.C., that is able to sway discussion both in the media and in Congress and within the various executive agencies to stop any reform or undermine anyone they perceive to be a threat to their established order. You can call it the administrative state. You call it whatever you want, but these are unelected, often unappointed, rarely elected officials who are conspiring against the consent of the governed.
So, and I'd love to elaborate on that just a little bit, because it used to be that both parties really had the same values. They just had different ways of accomplishing it. And so when we had a bureaucratic state, it was, for the most part, to try to benefit the American public. Conservatives didn't really like it, but it wasn't that harmful. But now it's been taken over by full-on leftists. And that is something that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Anathema to constitutional-loving people. They don't accept the Constitution. They don't like the Constitution. They don't approve of freedom. They prefer the government to have control, and that's where it's gotten dangerous. And so it's not just that it's an embedded bureaucracy. It's actually an embedded bureaucracy that disagrees with American values. And that's why it's become so dangerous. So to my mind, there's been a tremendous shift to the left over the past 30 years, 40 years. Gradual, granted, but recent years it's ramped up. And the fact that Donald Trump was elected as sort of a referendum on that, on the deep state, on the leftist state, has just gotten them so it's kicking the hornet's nest. And now they've come out and they're attempting this coup, and we're lucky that we still have FOIA, that we still have freedom of speech, that you can still do the yeoman's work to uncover this, and that we have a president who's willing to stand up to them. God bless him. Okay, you get the last word, Tom Fitton. Sorry.
Well stated, and I'll just say, this is a big test for our republic. The president's not above the law, but he's not beneath the protection of the law. And as you alluded to, we've got a lot of people here in town who see the Constitution as a fig leaf to provide cover for illegal action, and frankly are opposed to the very idea of a Republican government. And I mean Republican with a small r. Right.
Representational government. Exactly. Tom Fitton, thanks so much for coming on. Go to judicialwatch.org to check out everything that they've got going on. And they're constantly publishing some great stuff. And by the way, follow them on Twitter. Follow Tom Fitton on Twitter. Actually, it's at Judicial Watch, because they constantly put up new videos and new information, things that they uncover through the FOIA acts and so on. It's just great. I'm really grateful that Tom decided to come on the show today. Okay.